Hello and a warm welcome to our special broadcast on Rajya Sabha TV as we stand by today to pay our tributes to the Dravidian stalwart M. Karunanidhi, who passed away last evening after battling with his health for a long time. The man who fired the Tamil Nadu politics not only with his energy and dynamism but also with his oratorical and screenwriting skills has left a deep void in the political and the cultural circle of the country. From all corners of the nation, leaders, followers, party men all continue to pay their tributes to the man who has fondly been addressed as Kalainar and Thalavi. His mortal remains will be laid to rest perhaps today, but the controversy over the burial ground still has not been resolved to allow or not to allow him space at the Anna Square at Marina Beach. Joining me now is Ganpati Subramaniam, Chief of Bureau, Puthai Thalamurai. He will be continuing with us for the discussion. Good morning, Ganpati. Indeed, it's not a very good morning, I should say. But Tamil Nadu has, I think, lost one of its last icons, if I could say.
Of course, in the last 60 years, it is not possible to have any discussion on Tamil Nadu politics without Karunanidhi. He was always there as the Chief Minister or opposition leader. He was always on the forefront of Tamil Nadu politics. Every day he will be on the headlines. That kind of personality, dominating personality, and the party that he was heading uninterrupted. There was never any challenge to him. Right. The party broke, people left. But as long as he was there, even as of yesterday, he was the president of the party. His son Stalin, who is going to take over, was only the working president. That was the kind of dominance and charisma of a very strong leader.
Absolutely. In fact, Narayan Lakshman, who is the associate editor of Hindu, also joins us on Skype. Narayan, good morning. I'm sure the morning is not good in Chennai at all and also across the country. I was just speaking to Ganpati about the kind of void which M. Karunanidhi has left in politics and in the cultural field of India. But you've also had your interactions with him. Can you share some experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right to observe that there is an enormous void here, and it is absolutely the first day of mourning, but actually a very real day of grief for the people of Tamil Nadu across the political spectrum. It is not just DMK supporters, because as we were saying in earlier discussions, he represented the Dravidian movement through the 50s, 60s and beyond. And that was a movement that was very much on behalf of all Tamil people and recognizing Tamil ethnicity, Tamil rights. Of course, it had a radical form early on, and then it moderated into a much more inclusive, accommodative form from the 80s, especially onwards. Yeah. So what comes across, what we would remember Mr. Karunanidhi for, including myself personally, is how accessible he was, how accessible, in fact, his entire party structure was. So therein also lies a difference between the style of governance internally between the DMK and the ADMK. So whether it was MGR or Jayalalitha and the ADMK, they ruled with an iron fist in the sense of not allowing any challenges to leadership, not even allowing the green shoots of leadership to arise within the party. And however, Mr. Karunanidhi and other DMK leaders had a far more nurtured, mutually nurturing aspect, and they allowed, there was leadership to a greater extent. Right. But having said that, the Karunanidhi family certainly retained a sense of centralized authority within the party. Their successes hinged much less on the one single personality, as it did in the ADMK, than on organizational capability, the ability to mobilize cadres across the districts of Tamil Nadu, and that made an enormous difference right. to the successes and the fortunes right. of the party.
Right. So Narayan, I'll interrupt you here. Narayan, yes, I'll interrupt you here for a second. Those are live visuals coming to you from the Rajya Hall, where the mortal remains of Karunanidhi are there. You can see legions of party workers and leaders coming from across the country to pay their tributes to the leader who's not only a patriarch, is not only a writer, but a coalition stalwart, a 5-time CM. So you can see those grieving people, leaders and mourners coming across, paying their tributes to Mr. M. Karunanidhi. Ganpati, the way this man was shrewd at, stitching alliances and the the backroom maneuvering is something which people remember when you talk about his style of politics. Tell us a little about the way he managed his alliances, and also when his party was not in power, how he addressed the cadres through his mouthpiece Murasoli, and keeping their morale always on a high.
Yeah, as a very seasoned politician, Karunanidhi could convince you that you should form an alliance with him. Next day, he could convince me that DMK should not have an alliance with you. That was his capability. One day alliance with Congress, next election no alliance with Congress, maybe alliance with BJP, etc. That is how he managed. Like in the Vajpayee government, DMK was part of the coalition and they had ministers representing the DMK. Then when the government changed and the UPA came to power, again DMK was back in power. DMK was then partner of the UPA. That was the capability. He has opposed people and he has formed alliance with the same people whom he had opposed. That was the capability, and he was always considered to be a reliable ally who will not ditch you in between. Despite so many changes that he has made, the choices that he has made throughout his political career, despite that, people considered him to be a reliable ally. That was the kind of character that he had built up. And again, what we see, the fighting spirit of Karunanidhi is unmatched. It was not a single day when he would not address, as you mentioned very rightly, the party cadre through the party mouthpiece. Every day they would read it, right, and every day he would write. No, I don't think anybody can match that kind of caliber. And he kept the morale of the cadre up with all the time, whether he was in opposition. When MGR became the chief minister, MG Ramachandran made sure that the DMK could not come to power. As long as MG Ramachandran was alive, DMK could not come to power at all.
Absolutely.
So during those testing times also, Karunanidhi had a very tough period, but he managed to keep the party afloat and the cadres fighting fit. If he lost the assembly election, he made sure that he made a dent in the Lok Sabha election. That was the fighting spirit with which he carried on.
Indeed. So Karunanidhi was a man and a politician who was known for his indefatigable spirit, and he was a man of strong convictions. Narayan, I'll come to you. Not many people of the present generation know about the Kalakudi episode and how it became a turning point, and how he actually left an imprint as a politician with that episode way back. Could you just explain to the audience what that whole episode was all about and how he actually made a mark in politics with that episode?
Well, I mean, specific episodes are important, but I think the bigger question here is, what kind of legacy he has left for the people as such. Right. Because I think really that is being underappreciated at the moment, especially my concern is in the light of this whole question about his last resting place and so on. I would like to just unpack, if I may, what his role in the Dravidian movement as such was, which is that although he initially made a mark for himself as a scriptwriter and as a man who had remarkable oratory and linguistic skills, he was able to move from that and rise meteorically within the party through his organizational ability. And he was recognized by his mentors, C.N. Annadurai and Periyar, as someone who could really take charge and be at the helm of things. So I think the big thing that a lot of people don't even recognize adequately today is that set Tamil Nadu on a completely different path from, even in a sense, the rest of India. And I'm not talking about secession and Tamil Nadu moving away from the Indian Union, but in terms of even welfare economics, mass welfare schemes, India as such leaned much more towards the mainstream sort of neoliberal economic paradigm that even the World Bank and so on espoused, where you have to keep fiscal prudence front and center, and you have to provide only macroeconomic stability. Here you have in Tamil Nadu, under the DMK and Karunanidhi, and then subsequently the ADMK too, you had a system where chief ministers were willing to provide welfare goods even when it literally stretched the state government budget to breaking point, as it did, say, in 2001 and so forth. And so this was, however, based on a far deeper recognition of what are the needs of the people, what role do welfare goods play, and what is the needs of the state in that sense. Right. So you have this blend of Tamil economic policy, in a sense, with alongside Tamil ethnic policy, right. And that really, under Karunanidhi especially, had a very definitive sort of form, and it is a question mark as to whether that will be carried forward by other leaders or not after his passing.
Yeah, you rightly put that his welfarist policies, they actually defined the entire ethos of an era, if I could say. Ganpati, coming to this whole controversy about the burial place, whether or not he should be accorded the burial space at the Anna Square at Marina Beach. As we are discussing, the hearing probably is still on, and we do not know whether he'll be allowed the space at Anna Square. What do we make of this entire episode? A tall leader, a patriarch, a very tall leader of Tamil Nadu being denied a space with one premise that he was a former CM. It's really unfortunate, I believe.
Absolutely. What Mr. Narayan Lakshman said is absolutely correct. Without any doubt, these technical issues should not come in between. People should be magnanimous in taking decisions on such important things. And Karunanidhi, you can today say technically he is a former chief minister, but he has been chief minister of the state for 5 times and such a tall leader, senior most leader in Tamil Nadu. Therefore, these things should be avoided, and such controversies are not good for the entire state. It is not only for DMK or for the Karunanidhi family, but for the entire state. Politics of such pettiness should be avoided. Maybe people cite technical reasons, but there are ways to overcome those technical reasons. Good sense should prevail, and they should take the right decision. But the court hearing at 10:30 at night and again at 8 a.m. in the morning, all these should have been avoided. Suppose if the DMK cadre go berserk because of this, they get upset and indulge in violence, who is responsible for that? So therefore, these things should have been avoided, and even now there is time enough to provide a good solution. I think they should do it.
Right. And Narayan, this whole bit about how the coastal regulation norms would be violated if Marina Beach is allowed to become a burial place. With what prism do we look at things at the moment? On one hand, you have a tall leader whose mortal remains are lying, and the body has to be laid to rest. And here you have all these legal and technical issues coming up. How do you really make sense of this entire thing? Okay, I think there's some technical issue with the audio there. Ganpati, as I was just asking Narayan, that how do you make sense of this entire situation? On one hand, you have a tall leader whose mortal remains are lying, waiting to be laid to rest. And here you have these technical issues. Some people also citing these environmental laws that, these, Marina Beach should not be allowed to become a burial place.
See, Karunanidhi did not die suddenly. He was in the hospital. Everybody knew that his condition was critical, etc. Karunanidhi family had rightly informed the central government and made their request. They have also informed the state government and made a request. So, the authorities concerned should have taken a decision. Even yesterday, Stalin, Kanimozhi, Argiri and DMK leaders all met the chief minister and briefed them of the situation. So considering all this was in the works, they should have found a solution by now. Why keep it till such a last moment to have a midnight hearing or early morning hearing and leave it to the court, etc.? The government itself could have provided a solution to the court, and finally they want to hide behind the court decision and do whatever they can. That's not the way government should operate. And Prime Minister visited Karunanidhi and his family when he was at home. Later on, President, Congress President, everybody visited him in the Kaveri hospital.
In fact,
central ministers visited him. Everybody knew that
in fact, EPS and OPS also visited the Rajaji Hall this morning, they were seen.
Exactly. They visited the Rajaji Hall this morning. They also visited Mr. Karunanidhi in the hospital a week back. They all knew that one day or other they have to answer this question. They should have prepared for it.
Yeah. So all in all, this kind of a situation could have been avoided, because it's really an unfortunate incident that a tall leader like M. Karunanidhi, who's been a party patriarch and a 5-time chief minister, a 13-time MLA, who's never lost an election after 1957. These are the kind of merits which you see behind a leader, a tall leader like him, and then you deny the burial space. In fact, in a public career spanning almost 7 decades, Karunanidhi donned several hats. In 94 years that he was alive, he spent about 80 years in public life, 70 years in the field of cinema, arts and literature, and 50 years as the chief of the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam party. In this report, let's now take a look at how Karunanidhi rose from humble beginnings to becoming a political stalwart. Take a look.
Muthuvel Karunanidhi was born on June 3, 1924 at Tirukkuvalai in erstwhile Thanjavur district of Tamil Nadu. He was born into a poor Isai Vellalar family, members of a temple-dependent caste that traditionally played the Nadaswaram. His father named him Dakshinamurthy and wanted him to propagate the family's musical tradition. It was the music lessons that gave Karunanidhi his first lessons in politics, as it reflected the caste intricacies of that era. He was not allowed to cover his upper body and his learning was restricted to a few songs. At the age of 14, Karunanidhi was inspired by a speech made by Alagiri Swami of the Justice Party, which prompted him to enter politics. Soon he became a student activist in Periyar's self-respect movement, which fought for the rights of the Dravidians against the domination of North Indians. It was the anti-Hindi agitation in the late 1930s that catapulted him into the thick of the Dravidian movement, elevating his profile in the state. He led campaigns fighting for the rights of Dravidians, and this brought him into political prominence in Tamil Nadu in the 1950s. The Kallukudi demonstration in 1953 became the turning point in Karunanidhi's political career. He led the anti-Hindi agitation in the city of Kallukudi when it was decided that the city's name would be changed to Dalmiapuram, as the Dalmia group wanted to set up a cement plant in the area. He blocked the movement of trains by lying on the railway tracks for many hours and was later arrested by the police. In 1957, Karunanidhi was first elected to the Tamil Nadu Assembly from the Kulithalai seat of Tiruchirappalli district. Since then, he never lost an election that he fought and was elected to the Tamil Nadu Assembly 13 times. In 1961, he was appointed the DMK treasurer, and a year later he became the deputy leader of opposition in the state assembly. In 1967, when the DMK formed the government, he got a cabinet berth as the Minister for Public Works and Highways. In 1969, Karunanidhi was sworn in as the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu for the first time following the death of former CM Annadurai. Since then, he served as the Chief Minister of the state 5 times. Karunanidhi gained national prominence in 1975 when he opposed the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi for imposing emergency. His fierce opposition resulted in the central government dissolving the Tamil Nadu government in 1976. In the 1977 elections, the AIADMK led by M.G. Ramachandran trounced the DMK and stayed in power for as long as MGR was alive. It was only after MGR's death in 1989 did the DMK stage a comeback, and Karunanidhi became the Chief Minister for a 3rd time after a gap of 13 years. In 2001, Karunanidhi was dragged from his home at night and arrested by police officials for alleged corruption in the construction of 10 flyovers in and around Chennai. His arrest created massive political ripples in the state. Described as a masterful practitioner of modern-day politics, Karunanidhi played a significant role in giving shape to the United Progressive Alliance led by the Congress Party. Till date, the DMK is one of the main constituents of the alliance. The DMK was also a constituent of the BJP-led NDA and had ministers in the Atal Bihari Vajpayee cabinet. Outside his political life, he was a prolific scriptwriter in the Tamil film industry. He was popular for writing historical stories which furthered the rationalist ideals of the Dravidian movement. He started his writing career with the film Rajakumari in 1947, and this was also the first time that MGR and him were seen together on screen. Some of his early plays included Mani Magudam, Ore Ratham, Thookumedai, Vellikiramai, Udayasuriyan and Sillapattikaram. In 2009, a Tamil film Pen Singham, which had script written by Karunanidhi based on his old novel, was released. In 2010, he wrote his 75th script titled Ilangan, based on which a film was also released. His passing away has created a huge vacuum in the socio-political landscape of Tamil Nadu.
So M. Karunanidhi, who is also fondly addressed as Talavi or Kalainar, has left a deep void in the field of politics and culture, and especially Tamil Nadu is never going to forget a leader like him. Ganpati, my question now to you is about those days when the Hindi agitation was being fought, and he played an active role, behind that entire episode, and how he goaded other South Indian states also, to fight for their language. That was a very important aspect in those times. Just explain it to the audience how that episode, unfolded, and what kind of legacy he left after that.
The Dravidian movement leaders, especially Karunanidhi, believed strongly that the state should be independent, autonomous. That is how they used to say that we will be autonomously ruling the state and we will also share power at the center. It's not the other way around of center dictating terms to the state. State will be ours, we will run it. At the same time, we will have an influence at the center. That is how they looked at it. And now slowly other states also started realizing that that is the way to go for development. Central government sitting in Delhi cannot dictate to Assam and Kerala and Rajasthan in one voice that this is the development model. Development models are different for the needs of different regions of the country, different states of the country. So they realized that early and said, we will have our own autonomous model, and they are fiercely independent. And Karunanidhi is hugely appreciated for opposing the emergency. His government was dismissed. His son was put in jail. DMK leaders were beaten up. But despite that, they fought on and came back to power. And not only that, the political maturity of Karunanidhi is such that he later on did not hesitate to have an alliance with the Congress.
Absolutely.
The Congress was not untouchable for him.
Right. And that is why many people do describe him as a grandmaster of coalitions, a grandmaster of federalism. Narayan, how would you look at the legacy which M. Karunanidhi is now going to leave behind? And of course, Stalin now will be at the helm of affairs in all probabilities. But how do you look at the legacy which he has left behind?
Well, there are several aspects to his legacy. The most important being his sort of bringing front and center the cause of the common Tamil man and woman. And I think he espoused that over a career of nearly 6 decades. And I think today, as a result of the Dravidian movement, all the things we've been discussing on the show, Tamil politics is perceived as unique, and with good reason. And it is because it is a state that is known for making up its own mind. Yes, to outsiders, it appears quite quixotic and strange that the Tamil people seem to idolize their film stars and allow them easy entry into politics. But there is a very complex historical reason for that, and that has to do with the use of film as the medium for propagating political messages, which is how MGR, Karunanidhi, and many others in the state have risen to power. And it is, therefore, his legacy definitely encompasses that unique political medium, which again, as I said, appears quite strange and puzzling to outsiders. That is the first. The second is, as I said earlier, an understanding that the needs of the welfare needs of the people have to be again prioritized over and above even things such as industrial development, macroeconomic stability. And therein there is a slightly contrarian view to what the rest of India adopted. And I think Tamil Nadu continues to be that way. And lest we risk romanticizing that too much. There was a dark side too to that, which is that as a result of the centralized political power that you needed to make the distribution of mass welfare goods go through successfully,
Absolutely.
there was also, whether you like it or not, a tendency to loot the state, to engage in grand larceny or corruption at the highest level. And that has certainly damaged the state in terms of prospects for industry, for steady economic growth, and generally fostering a sense of
in fact, the welfarist, the welfarist policies which have been followed by the Dravidian leaders have always been a subject of debate in all across the discussions. People have debated it, but today it's not the time and the moment to discuss the welfarist policies in exclusion. But it's time to pay tribute to such a tall leader who not only was a strong political stalwart, but also was a strong literature, who left an imprint with his rhyme, with his rhetoric and his fiery speeches. We at Rajya Sabha TV pay our condolences to the family and also our tributes to the departed leader. As the concluding mark, we could all say that the titan of Tamil politics departs. Thank you and goodbye.